The next part, cultural anthropology. This is also called ethnology. The book is going to do the study of contemporary societies and cultures. Obviously, you could also study ancient cultures as well, but our book is focusing on cultures that are still existing today. I was a history major in my undergrad, and so I got a lot of anthropology just because of our study of the past, of archaeology, those customs, ideas, religious beliefs. In cultural anthropology, the emphasis is going to be on the cultural traits and variations. And remember, I told you already, culture is what is learned, what is given to you by your parents, your community, your culture. Cultural anthropology, this is descriptive, and it's an attempt to understand along with a promotion of toleration for diverse cultures. So I think this is the question I ask you to deal with in the discussion board for this week. What perspective is the book coming from? And this is it. It's coming from a cultural relative perspective. And I will talk more about that towards the end of the class. Actually, maybe this would be a good place to do it. Yeah, let me do it here. Cultural relativism is descriptive. It's simply telling you that in different places, different people at different times are going to behave in different ways. And it's simply telling you about it. It's not going to say, oh, this culture was so good or this culture is so evil. They're just going to tell you about the cultures. To the best of their ability, they're not going to put value judgments on it. So keep this marker in your mind. Cultural anthropology is descriptive. I'm sorry, not cultural anthropology, cultural relativism. But that is the approach our book is using. It's a cultural anthropology approach using cultural relativism. So they're trying to be descriptive rather than critiquing or evaluating cultures. Now, when you take ethics with me, we have an ethical theory called ethical relativism. And ethical relativism is prescriptive. It's telling you how you ought to behave. So, for example, when in Rome, do as the Romans. Each society gets to tell you its norms, its values, its laws. Ethical relativism is simply telling you how, like, the ancient Persians were different from the ancient Hebrews, which were different from modern 21st century Southern Californians. They're not going to say one is right, the other is wrong, etc. In ethical relativism, they would be saying, if you live in 21st century Southern California, that is the culture you need to adhere to. If you were living in 1st century Babylon, you need to adhere to 1st century Babylonian norms. So that is how they are different. And we also have moral relativism, which is simply saying morals and ethics are relative to place and time or to circumstances, like kind of like circumstantial ethics. So try to keep those clear in your mind. The book's obviously coming from a secular humanist, materialist, and then cultural relativist perspective. Let's break down those words real quick. What's a secular humanist?
Would it be somebody who just lives by like a secular worldview? Like they don't adhere to any form of ethical beliefs based on their religion?
Okay, right. They would have ethics, certainly, but they would not be religiously based ethics because secular humanists do not believe in the supernatural. They only believe that we are physical material beings. And so that's why you see an emphasis in this book on Darwinian evolution, because they don't have a creator God. They don't have a supernatural. They only have the physical material world. So they're trying to explain humanity in physical material terms. So I want that to be clear to you as you're reading this book. And you might be saying, why are we using such a godless book, Blackburn? This is a Christian college. Well, I think it's of great value because it shows you how many people, especially in the scientific communities and in the world, view humanity. They don't view us as some supernatural, that there's some supernatural being who gave us life and animated us and made us in his image. Rather, we literally came as a result of time and chance and different adaptations and mutations from very simple single-celled organisms to what we have become today. And we're still evolving at the moment. Who's to say what will be a million years from now if we survive as a species? So just be aware of that as you're reading through the book. But you should be reading critically anyways. I mean, if you haven't learned not to be a sponge by this point, God help you. I will help you. And for heaven's sakes, whatever I say in this class, don't believe it just because I said it. I mean, critique it. For half the time, I'm not even teaching stuff I believe anyways in here. I'm trying to teach first person. So when we go through these different theories and perspectives, I'm trying to give you the strongest version of it as I can, rather than like a Christian straw man version of it that I can dismiss without much trouble. So I want you to see why people believe we evolved from or split off from the great apes. I want you to understand why they care about primates. I want you to understand how they're going to try to make up value judgments about human beings. But they're coming from a very different worldview than a Judeo-Christian or theistic worldview. All right, onward. Fieldwork. A major part of cultural anthropology is to actually go out into the field where you study is conducted within the context of a people group. You live with them, you eat their food, you learn their language, and as much as possible, you observe them from the inside, right? So you're not trying to sit in your ivory tower and look out through the window and then write all this stuff you think you know about a people group. You come down from that intellectual tower, you go out into the world, and you actually live with people that are different than you. And this is what I'm hoping we can do if this COVID thing lightens up by midterms, we'll just see, is I want you in small groups to actually go out and do field work in a culture or subculture here in San Diego. Now, if we still don't have that freedom, we'll find some virtual way to do it. Maybe we'll look at virtual subgroups. And there's plenty of those, right? We have all the right and left-wing media sources and their devotees. We have all sorts of clubs and groups that have online access and variation, different religious groups, different, like we could even do like subgroups like surfer culture or steampunk culture, or there's just a wide variety. And I'm not that aware of a lot of internet cultures, but you guys are all technology natives. I'm an immigrant, so in this you would probably be way ahead of me on the curve. But we'll see how things are progressing at midterm before we get into that. And then finally, ethnography, writing about that people group. And I'm asking you guys to write a 10-page report, but this is a group report. So if you have three, 4 people in your group, you're only looking at 2.5, 3 pages a piece, right? So this isn't a huge thing, but I want it, you can pick one of your group members to be the editor, and they can compile it, because I want it presented as a formal 10-page research paper, with the whole 9 yards, right? Thesis statement, concluding paragraph. I want resources. I want bibliography. I want all these things incorporated. And then you'll put everyone's name in the group onto that paper. So you'll be sharing the grade. And I know you might be thinking, no, Blackburn, I hate group projects. Well, welcome to life. I mean, I get to do lots of group projects here at the school and my different committees and meetings, and it's just good practice learning how to work with people.